I wanted to start my video off with a picture of one of my favorite video games that I feel emphasizes the principles of classical organization. Now here we have these purple guys destroying these buildings. Okay. And what we just saw is missile turrets being destroyed by Zerglings. The Zerglings were the small units. And a Zergling's whole purpose is to be created quickly and then to attack quickly. It has very low health and it has very high speed and very high attack. So it's killed quite quickly. Now, the benefits of using that technique is in this game, if you use Zerglings quickly, you can overcome the enemy and defeat them almost instantly, almost at the beginning of the match. Now, the reason I showed this clip is because they were destroying missile turrets. Missile turrets cannot attack ground units. And I used that image to emphasize how when you have a specialized employee or a specialized military unit that can do a specific task, they're extremely efficient at it. And that's one of the primary principles of classical theory. So classical theory is an organizational theory, and the best part of it is that goods can be mass-produced easily. Brother Embray from the BYUI communications course, he brought up how a chair can be produced very quickly. While prior to the Industrial Revolution, chairs took a long time to make. There were no machines involved to produce them. And overall, the quality was quite good. However, with machines being introduced, it led to chairs being made less well, but more could be produced, and it became cheaper to produce chairs that way and sell them at lower cost and earn more money than those who could make a nice chair. That's a fantastic example of what the best part of this theory is. Now, the worst part of the theory is a complete absence of humanity. I say absence of humanity because individuals are not treated with respect in this theory. They are cogs in a machine. And I found a great lecture by Dr. Rosa Ricard in a YouTube lecture. And he explained how in this theory, innovation is discouraged. Employees are seen as just cogs or parts of a machine. And that's pretty terrible from a humanistic standpoint, but really good from an efficiency standpoint. The title of this slide, do you want robots making your food? Robots cannot think or feel what they're doing. They cannot sense what you do want or what you don't want, and they can't think of a better way to make the food. An example that I have is I was trying to get some information about my Amazon account. And so I called the Amazon customer service line, and they asked me, do I have my password? And I said, no, I'm calling to get my password. And they said, okay, we need your username. Can you give us that? And I told them my username. And then they asked me, what's the password for that username? And I said, well, I'm looking for the password for that username. And they said, well, we can't give you the password unless you're able to log in. And I went from the lowest level of customer service all the way to the management, as high up as it would go. and every one of them said the same thing. And they all behaved like robots, and I became incredibly frustrated with this. So thinking in this way, having robots making your food, I value food immensely. And so if we have machines or robots making our food, I don't imagine our food will be very good, but it will be produced quickly. And we see examples like Kentucky Fried Chicken, where I do not like that food at all, except the skin. And I expect the skin to be good, and it always is good whenever I get it. And it's that way wherever I go, whether I'm in China or in Idaho. And it's not good quality, but it tastes fine, and it's always delivered quickly. So continuing on the line of robots not being able to think, I teach children, and children are very good at self-expression. They are not good at being machines. They're terrible at it. They're terrible at following directions for extended periods of time, and they're terrible at just taking orders. But after you train them for a while, they're incredibly good at it. I can simply hold up 3 fingers and then count down from 3 to 2 to 1, and all of my students will return to their seats and sit well. And part of me feels this is both good and bad, because it's not ideal to treat them as machines. So thinking of coloring books, a machine printed thousands of coloring books, but it's incapable of imagining what can be done in that coloring book and making new things for that coloring book, and extending the images. While it's impressive that they can produce that many books, a mere child is able to create art and express themselves on that piece of paper. They have individuality, and even though they likely could not make their own coloring book, depending on their age, they're capable of doing something the robot would never be able to do. And that's what's really lost in this organizational theory. So let's look at some pros. In this theory, managers run everything, and I say that's a pro because in businesses like fast food or the postal service or the military or any service that requires something to be done in a prompt manner, it's best to just have a central figure that can maintain the vision of what needs to happen and then to promptly distribute that information to those who need it, the employees, and they do it without question. And though this, from a humanistic standpoint or from a social standpoint, is not effective, it makes society run incredibly efficiently. Imagine if a city employee, like a garbage truck worker, said, I'll just choose my own routes and dump whatever trash cans I feel like dumping. We would have garbage all over the city. That needs to be done in a systematic and scientific and machine-like way to create maximum efficiency to get rid of that. The country I live in now, China, is notorious for this kind of method, both for good and bad. And a good bad example is Chinese love this theory, and so it's in their culture. And so if any authority figure or boss tells them to do something in a certain way, they just do it. And my favorite example is they believe that drinking cold water during a woman's period, can be very bad for the woman, making her sick, making the period last longer, all sorts of things, where in the Western world we just know that's not true. So, there's pros and cons to that. And let's talk about the origins of this theory. Brother Embre mentioned that it began in Prussia with Frederick the Great. However, Dr. Rosa, who I mentioned before, and Sherry Hartzell with an MBA in communications, they say the beginnings were just during the Industrial Revolution, when people began needing, when managers began needing employees to compete with machines and their production. And you can see how that's somewhat spilled over now, where machines are doing so many menial tasks now, it's much more necessary for individuals to become specialized in a specific field, because machines can do pretty much everything a human can at this point, except become creative, which is good in many ways, because humans are now free to access their potential, while machines do machine work in a machine theory. Being easily replaced if one breaks down, that's a great advantage of this theory. That's why low-skilled jobs use this theory, because they're easy to replace. Whether you're a grunt on a construction crew or a drone at McDonald's, you just do as you're told, because you just need to get the burger out there. Advancements is not just a buzzword. We see that in the media a lot, where people just say there's been advancements made in all sorts of fields, when, like I mentioned before, UPS, military, fast food, construction, government maintenance jobs, all of those are not particularly looking for advancements from the low-ranking officials. They're typically just looking for people to get the job done. So when people say there's been advancements made in a particular field, it's usually because of some other thing not coming from a low-level employee, because there's a top-down communication. The top will tell the bottom what to do. Finding a way to improve depends on what you mean by improve. These are the three major theorists in this theory. We have Frederick Winslow Taylor, this guy, and then we have Max Weber, and we have Henry Fayle. Frederick Winslow Taylor, he's the real father of this theory. He established it. Max Weber, he really contributed to this theory by grouping people of the same skill level together. And Henry Fayle, he gave the first comprehensive theory of management. And that's really important, that these three men did this, because it led to other organizational theories being developed. They started the process of studying organization. When this theory is looked at, the most important thing is that the results are the most important thing by this, being the most efficient and effective to getting this done. And that's usually done by trying to find the best method for whatever you're doing. What is the best method for organizing your cabinet space? That would be an theory in a machine way, making it just as simple and as organized as possible, with specific people doing specific things. That is what is most important. And making sure those pieces can be replaced quickly, efficiently, and easily. The most important thing for underlings working in this theory is don't think of yourself as a human. Think of yourself as a cog in a machine. But a cog does wonderful things. I'm grateful for lawnmowers and all of their working facets. They're fantastic. So it's not bad, but it is dehumanizing, and it neglects the human need for belonging. My interpretation, I learned a lot from this theory by playing StarCraft. And the most important bits, basic jobs are this theory. Not if you want to be a creative type. Here is my information slide. and I love my